We're gonna let a few more people join in. We have an awesome group tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. How's everyone feeling? Let us know in the chat box between 0 and 10. How's everyone doing today? I wanna know, we wanna know. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? I'm gonna pop my headphones in, but we're really excited to see a lot of our members here tonight. Show of hands if you're a City Moguls member. Yay, hello, awesome. We got some 8.5s. We got some 7s. Awesome. 6, I'm with you on the 6, Vivian, today. Thank you for the lovely Instagram message you sent me, that was very kind. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys so much for being here tonight. We have a really, really exciting panel tonight. This is something that we really wanted to do, and we actually heard from a lot of you that you really wanted a discussion on content creation and what that's going to look like. And we decided, instead of just having one fabulous person, we're going to bring on 3 fabulous people from all different kind of walks of life in the content creation world. So if you haven't already seen, we have Natali from NYB Media. So she's kind of from the video production end, and she can tell you about I'm gonna let all the ladies introduce themselves tonight, all of her amazing accolades. We have Sabrina Madeaux, who's sideways right now for me. I don't know, Sabrina, I think you have to turn your phone or your computer. Oh yeah, woo! Virtual claps. Sabrina Madeaux, who's an incredible journalist, writer, communicator, content specialist, you name it, she's done it. And we'll talk a little bit about Sabrina's personal brand as well that she's created. and Nesh Pillay. Hi, Nesh. Who has started a company called Pillay and is a marketing exec and coming from a bit more of a marketing background. All three of these women are so incredible. I'm just going to let them introduce themselves, which is always so awkward, but you're going to do an amazing job. Please tell everyone about the amazing work that you do, because you do such amazing work. You've worked with some amazing clients, so don't be modest with us. So I will kick it off. I'll let Nesh introduce herself first, if that is okay.
So it's not like a save the best for last situation.
It's go first if you're awesome.
Okay, I like it. I'm Nesh. I'm the founder of Pillay, most recently. But as Danny said, also a marketing executive. Pillay is a branding PR agency. But I've had quite the journey career-wise, always sort of in and around storytelling and communications. I would definitely say at my core, I'm a storyteller. So I started off in journalism actually as well. So I have that in common with Sabrina. But after doing sort of international documentary filmmaking style stuff, I went on to just cover marketing and advertising, which I didn't even, oh, Florence, hi. I didn't even consider marketing as a real career thing. I even now tell my clients, just so you know, the money you're spending is nothing money. Like, marketing is a weird concept to me. But I went on to cover the industry. And so I got like the backdoor access to all the Mad Men type stuff that's still happening in New York. And what I was able to do was really learn about the industry from the inside and learn what's great about it, and also what's not so great about it, what's wasteful, how it's not really changing at the pace it needs to be changing. I went on to do a lot more in-house marketing work in ad tech, in other forms of lifestyle technology. Sorry, my dog doesn't like when I'm not paying attention to her. And then went on to start my own agency. Most recently, I've been doing a lot more speaking. So that's why I'd be remembered from Speaker Slam and winning some competitions in that route, and I've loved it. Oh, and I teach also. I teach at Centennial. I teach brand storytelling. Tila knows, yeah.
She's agreeing with you. And I had the pleasure of seeing you speak, Nesh, at Speaker Slam a while back, which is like already almost 2 years ago. And wow, your story is so incredible. And we'll chat a little bit more about that. Let's go to Sabrina.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Sabrina, and I'm a freelance journalist. I've done a lot of work with the National Post, where I've been their society editor for a very long time, and also writing arts and lifestyle columns. But I've also done work for the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, Fashion Magazine, Refinery 29, Vox Media, just kind of everywhere. That's what happens when you freelance. And I am also an on-air expert, sometimes for UT Canada, also for Cityline, talking about lifestyle and entertainment topics. I also have experience doing branded content and creating quality branded content that's organic. So really, I'm your person to talk to about placing things in editorial or broadcast media, and also how to make any sort of in-house content more interesting and make it reach farther.
Awesome. And Sabrina is also a Mogul alumni. She walked in our 2017 event. Yeah, wearing something fabulous. And yeah, you were amazing, and your career has just been so interesting to follow over the years. So thank you for being here. And last but not least, Natali Brusilovski.
Hi, my name is Natali. As you just heard, I am one of the co-founders of NYB Media. NYB Media is a creative content agency, and we've had the pleasure of working with some amazing brands like Canadian Tire, Visa, TD Bank, Samsung. And NYB Media has been around for the past 10 years. And recently we have pivoted our business into the coaching space. We are now coaching others and helping others create amazing content. We're in the course creation world. And one of our first programs is super simple video editing. So we're all about creating amazing videos and helping others do that.
And you guys are the real deal. You guys have created some amazing videos, and I'm excited to share and listen to some more of your tips and tricks for video, getting on camera, getting camera ready, presenting yourself. So we're happy to have you here, Nat. Thank you so much. Before we jump into this awesome roundtable, a couple things for housekeeping. If you have any questions at all for any of the ladies, put it into the chat box. We'd love to hear from you. We're going to have an awesome Q&A at the end of this. Anything goes, whatever you guys feel like you want to ask. This is the space. It is a safe space, and no question is too small or too big. So hopefully the ladies can help us out. So before we jump into this, I'm going to pass it off to my better half. I didn't even introduce myself. My name is Dani Fagan. I'm one of the co-founders. I'm going to learn today how to better present myself, I guess. I'm one of the co-founders of City Moguls, and I am joined by Victoria Marshman, who will tell you a little bit more about City Moguls if you're new to any of our Powerhouse webinars.
Mushy Brain Wednesdays.
Mushy Brain Wednesdays.
Hi guys, thank you. It's so good to see so many members, a couple new people here as well. If you're joining us for the first time, City Moguls is a platform that celebrates, educates, and inspires entrepreneurs our mission really is to build the next generation of incredible leaders who give back and make a difference in the world, which is why we love bringing you guys together as much as possible, because magic happens and ideas get sparked and collaborations happen. So this is why we're here. This is what it's all about. Again, if you have questions, if something's bothering you, this is the time to ask them. We're asking you to put them in the chat, and I will put you in the queue to ask the questions once we're done some formal questions, but excited to get things started. So Dani, off to you.
Okay, so I think the burning question is, content creation is changing so fast all the time, and it's the thing on everyone's brain, because that is at the heart of content creation is storytelling. And I think you guys, all three of you, are doing storytelling with your different avenues. So I guess, like, first and foremost, video is king. So I'm going to start there with Natali. And why is video king? Why is it so important to get on video?
Great question, Dani. So we all know how important video is as a marketing tool. Video is 80% more likely to convert than any other content. We also know that social media algorithms favor video more than anything, and going on stories live every single day heavily is favored by the algorithm as well. But what we're also noticing is that people are more interested in the person behind the brand than the actual brand. So I would urge you to get on camera and speak to your audience and connect with your audience as much as you can. Another really important thing to consider right now is the current times. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and it's really, we're not able to be in rooms with each other and connect with each other the same way we usually are. And the best way to connect with others is through video. We're using Zoom to communicate right now. We use Skype, FaceTime, all of those tools. And what people don't know is that studies have shown that communication is 93% body language. What does that mean? That means that it's 93% your tone of voice, the way that you speak, the way that your body moves, and only 7% what you're actually saying. So I really recommend that you get on camera and try to connect with your audience, your tribe, your people through camera. And I'll also share with you, when we made that transition from, creating content for our clients and now starting to create our own content for the course creation world, we created a podcast called the Course Creation Podcast. And we were trying to get all of these prominent guests on our show. And we were sending text messages and emails and asking these guests to be on our show, and no one responded. It wasn't until we started sending more personalized video messages that we started booking all of these amazing guests on our show. So not only is video an amazing conversion tool, but people will connect with you a lot more if you get on camera and speak to your tribe directly.
That is so interesting. First of all, I got a video message from your other half, from Yaz, inviting Victoria and I to come onto your podcast. And I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I had never really received anything like that before. And as Natalie's talking, I feel like some people should like start flicking on their cameras, because like, you just literally said it. That's exactly it. So kudos if you're on camera, and we're in a small group. So don't be shy if you're in your pajamas. It's all good. It's Wednesday. It's rainy. But yeah, that's really interesting, Nat. And I think like, you know, storytelling perspective from Sabrina's side maybe, and Nesh's side. What is storytelling from a writing perspective, Sabrina? Like, how do you get that across in an article, or if someone's writing a piece on you? Like, what advice can you give there in terms of getting your message across from your lens?
I think when you're talking about getting across a brand story, you have to keep in mind, well, first and foremost, that it is a story. It's not supposed to just be an advertisement, or while it is a promotional tool, it can't just come across as being a promotional tool. So when you're thinking about developing a story, whether it's for your own networks or whether you're pitching it to media, keep in mind that you should actually probably be a small part of that story, and then build off of that into a larger trend or a larger direction the industry's going. You want to make it seem organic, and you want to connect to things that, oh, I'm already interested in that, or I've heard about this, so that it draws people in that way. I also think it's really important, if you are pitching to media and trying to get them to tell your story, to really do your research on who you're pitching, both in terms of the publication and what type of content they cover, what type of tone they cover it in, how long ahead they tend to work. If it's a newspaper or a website, that's usually daily or weekly. If it's a magazine, it can be 6 months in advance. So really try to get a sense of that and tailor your story to those things. And also research your individual writers and what types of stories they like to tell. Do they like to do profiles, go behind the scenes? Are they very trend focused? All of that will help you weave something that a writer will get in their inbox, or a producer if it's on television, and it'll instantly connect with them. You're doing the work for them almost by giving them the building blocks of a story that they can then add to for their platform or outlet.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit more. Like, and also, I mean, I'm sure some other people are thinking the same thing. How important is traditional media now, and getting your stories in traditional media? I'm sure you get this all the time.
Yeah, well, I might be a bit biased as a newspaper journalist, but I think it is still important. They still have really big audiences. A lot of people still read them and watch them if it's television. That said, you always have to keep in mind who you want to reach. If it's newspapers, yeah, that tends to skew a little bit older, but then you also tend to have more of a professional demographic and different income ranges. If you want to be online, probably, if you're looking for a younger demographic. And definitely you can tailor your story and your message to each of those mediums. I think it would be a mistake to try to tell the same story through different mediums. So it's a different thing if you're going to a newspaper than it is if it's a women's magazine, than if it's on Instagram, than if it's on your blog, than if it's on YouTube. You should be tailoring to each of those different audiences and platforms.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. Like, how do you build a proper pitch, that doesn't take you a million years if you're going to build these different stories for all these different outlets? Like, can you give some of the entrepreneurs here some advice on like how to really craft their stories for different outlets?
Absolutely. The number one thing I say, you don't need to hire professional PR. I answer and get story ideas from business owners and brand owners who just email me. And all you really need is a few paragraphs. Get to the point quickly, who you are, what story you want to tell, why it's unique, and personalize it. Like you were saying before, it helps a lot to do your research and to say, this is why I'm contacting you. Oh, I've read your work and I noticed you like to cover this. Or we're looking to work with you because you tend to put this certain spin on things. Anytime you can personalize it really, really helps. And just make sure you have assets ready to go, so that if that journalist or producer says, great, let's put you on air tomorrow, or let's do an interview, or I want to publish something next week, that you have some sort of photography, if that's relevant, that you're available for interviews, that you have that ready to go so that there's no sorts of delay. Because media can work very, very quickly, especially in the online realm these days.
I feel like, Nesh, you wanted to say something on the PR thing. I saw your brain go, well, so I feel like we're going to have some conflicting things, which is awesome. And I think that's great for us to hear. So what are your thoughts on PR and when you're
I'm here for the fight. No, having been on both sides of it, just like I remember my days being as an in-house reporter, I could not stand people who were in PR. It was the most, it's actually a very contentious relationship. A lot of people don't know that the relationship between journalists and PR professionals is not always a positive one, because often PR professionals have the pressure of their clients and journalists are trying to tell the news. So that's the core thing to remember when pitching journalists is that if you're not pitching actual news and you're just trying to pitch how great you are or how great your product is, it's unlikely that you're going to get picked up. So kind of like Sabrina said, make sure that you're looking at news trends and what's happening in the world, and you want to be adding to that rather than just trying to get the attention. On the flip side, I would say the value in maybe not a PR professional, but having someone sort of handling your brand and overseeing that is, and I've done this myself, sometimes when you're the founder especially, you're a little close to it. So your brand, your company is your baby. Nothing feels more personal than that. And one of the hardest lessons for me as an entrepreneur has been to surround myself with people who are smarter than I am at certain things. And it's hard to know when to step back, especially when it comes to things like public image. But there are people out there whose jobs are to craft that narrative for you, and they can do it in a way that maybe takes some of that personal feeling out of it for you, so that your narrative is one that can remain relevant in, you know, the world outside of you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and ladies, let's talk about strategy, because at the end of the day, you and Sabrina, you touched on this already, which is great. But I think from a marketing perspective, from you, Nesh, like, how does your storytelling tie into your brand strategy from a marketing lens?
Yeah, so ironically, I've used a similar structure to storytelling throughout my career. So whether it has been journalism, speaking, marketing, the core structure remains. And I know we were talking about different platforms or different ways to deliver that. So whether it's written content or video content, this core strategy has been one that's stuck with me this entire time. And it's so simple, I forget to speak about it. But it wasn't until I started teaching it in my class that I realized it's almost too simple. You don't think about it. You know how when you first start writing, when you're a kid in school, your teacher reminds you the 5 W's and the H, who, what, when, where, why, how. Often we are so, as entrepreneurs or marketers or whatever it is, caught up in this idea that we're trying to get out, that we actually don't take a second to look back and ask ourselves those very basic questions. And the way I recommend doing it is actually starting with who and why. Those are the first two things you need to know. And if you don't know, then whatever it is that you put out is going to be nonsensical. To the audience, it's just not going to flow well. So in terms of who, two things you have to know. Know yourself, know your audience. In knowing yourself, you want to know not just why you're putting this piece up, but these are the thoughts, the conversations that you have on your weekend retreat. These are the things that take months, even years, and will grow. It's what are your values? What are your strategic objectives? Who are you as a brand, as a company, as an entrepreneur? In knowing your audience, that's where some of that external listening comes in. It's not just the audience you want to have or the audience you'd like to have, but what do they care about right now? How are they consuming media? What types of media are they consuming? You know, like we can sit here and kind of make generalizations about what it is, but unless you know how your audience is consuming media, Sabrina mentioned newspapers or traditional media being great for certain audiences. Natali mentioned video being great for other audiences. Unless you know your audience, you're not going to know where that needs to be. So the first is that who, and that is one of the more important ones. The next one that people often forget is just the why. Really take a second to identify your goals. For your pieces, it could be one line, but unless you know why you're putting out a piece of content, it's going to feel a little frazzled. It's going to feel, I don't know. I think we're all familiar with brands that sometimes put out content that don't feel like they're part of a larger thing. every single piece of content you put out doesn't need to be some big life-changing thing. Sometimes it's just, you know what, I think this speaks to this one personality trait that I want our brand to have, or whatever it is. That's fine, but it's just know that. Do that strategically. The next ones are easy. When are you going to put it out? Where are you going to put it out? That's where you're going to start looking at the different platforms. What's getting the most engagement? What works for you? How? That's where we're going to figure out. Is it going to be video content, written content? Is it going to be the same piece of content that we're going to splice and move along? Who? What? Oh, what is obviously what you're doing. So that would be the campaign itself. I missed that one. But it's the who and the why that are the two that you really need to spend time, putting together. The actual process of putting the content together, that's where the experts do come in. That's where the great writers come in. That's where Natali and Sabrina come in. They can do all of that. But for you, as the head of your company, you need to be able to answer those questions.
That was awesome. I was like taking notes there. Thanks, Nesh. Yeah, I mean, Sabrina or Natali, do you have anything to say to chime in there on that? And separately, if you don't, I was going to ask something more generally to all of you. There are so many different platforms. So, how do people focus? And obviously, Nesh, you touched on this, knowing your audience, understanding what your audience is living on. But, there is a lot out there. There are a lot of different platforms, and you want to be everywhere as a brand, as a company, right? So how do you focus, and how do you understand where to put your priorities? And this is a question for all of you, really. Nesh, if you want to give it a...
I'll give it a word to start. There's two things that I see happen, and they're polar opposite things. There are some brands, and I say brands and individuals because it's often just the heads of companies who will be attached to a certain platform. Facebook worked so well for me at this point. So Facebook it is. And they kind of have blinders on, and they don't look at other platforms that are evolving. Then there's the other side of the spectrum, and you see it with big brands sometimes to the point that it's almost laughable, where they're like a squirrel outside chasing something. And so they're constantly being distracted by different platforms. And so instead of doing a really great job at one, they're just, suddenly, whatever it is, Shoppers Drug Mart is making TikToks, and it doesn't make sense to the audience. And that is an example of just not thinking about it strategically. I think that you want to be somewhere in the middle, where you know what works for you, you know what has worked historically, but you're prepared that at any given moment, there could be a new platform that takes over that platform. So you can create a strategy that's agile, that's not dependent on the platform. And I think that's the core part of it, is your content, your strategy shouldn't be dependent on the platform. There's going to be a different platform. It's going to happen. You're going to have to your team's going to have to adjust, or you're going to have to adjust your content to a new platform. That's just going to happen. But you need to learn, and you need to find a way to create a strategy that's agile. I'll say one more thing, and then I'm just going to be quiet, because I use the example of when architects build a bridge. Bridges are designed to deal with tectonic shifts. So the earth is going to change, and things are going to move around. The best bridges are the bridges that allow for that, rather than the ones that are so rigid that they don't allow for movement. So keep that in mind when building your strategies.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. I've never heard that one, by the way. I love that analogy. I'm gonna steal it. So Natali, let's go back to video for a second. How many people here are doing video content at home right now? Okay, a lot, which is great. So Nat, I mean, what are some of the best things that people can do to create great video quality at home? And, also just generally creating great videos. Like, I remember, I don't know if this resonates with anyone else, but I remember, no one knowing how to do this stuff, and you have to hire someone, and now everyone can do it from their homes, but there are good and bad ways to do it. So walk us through some of those things.
Absolutely. So there's definitely a few things to keep in mind if you're creating video content at home. The first thing is lighting. And this seems to sound super simple, but a lot of people forget this. You want the light source to be in front of you, not behind you. So shining on your face, not at the back of your head. I can't tell you how many times I've been on Zoom calls and I can't see the person at all. They just look like a silhouette because the light source is behind them. So stand in front of a window or a lamp or anything like that. You want the light source to be in front of you. The second thing is headroom. So a lot of people don't know what headroom means. And what that is literally the space between the top of your head and where the screen ends. You don't want, so you don't want the space to be too much because then you look really short. You don't want it to be too long because then you look really tall. These are just tiny little things that you can do to just improve your video quality. And then the third thing is audio. Just be mindful of your surroundings and where you are. Are you walking on the street? Is it really noisy? Is there sound coming from the windows? I've found whenever I tell anyone to record any sort of more professional sounding audio is that you can use the Apple headphones with the little speaker on the side. It works wonders. Danny, you have it in there already. That's what you're using. And I found that that actually produces really good quality audio. So those are the three things that I would recommend. Now, if you want to take it one step further and you're actually recording like more professional content on your iPhone, I would recommend getting a little tripod. So a lot of people don't realize this, but just even like the jitteriness of your hand, putting your iPhone on a tripod will go a long way, and you can buy them for like $20 on Amazon. So those are the 4 things that I would recommend if you're shooting content at home.
And Natalie's not endorsing, she's not an endorser of Amazon. It just so happens to be that it's on Amazon. Okay, just making sure.
I mean, you can buy it anywhere. There's to buy. I know a lot of people are using Prime, but like that's really all I'm saying is that they're $20. They're not expensive. So
no, it's a great tip because I think a lot of people have to do video content, and it is just a great way to kind of set it and forget it and be able to tell your story without thinking about holding your phone or anything like that. So that's a great tip. And I've been meaning to get a tripod for a very long time. I got a very cheap one. So I actually don't recommend going for something that's like super cheap because it'll break. But yeah, it's a great tip, Natali. Sabrina, you've created an amazing personal brand as well for yourself. I kind of wanted to talk about that because you have to create a lot of content for yourself and about yourself. And I think a lot of people shy away from that, don't like doing it, and you do it in such an authentic way. So can you give us some of your tips and tricks?
Yeah, I completely understand that. When I started off, social media did not come naturally to me. I'm naturally a very private person, so I didn't like putting myself out there. And I think that ended up actually benefiting me in that I wasn't too prone to oversharing. I think, like you said, what people really want right now is authenticity, whether you are a brand or a person. People are over the 5 filters and Photoshopped, and this obviously took 5 hours to set up sort of image or video content. I think people want a glimpse into your real life, what you really think. I think especially in this time where there are a lot of different political issues and current events, obviously you want to be aware of what you're saying online and not do anything that might harm your brand, but don't be afraid to have opinions. I think that people value those and want those from either the people behind the scenes at brands or individual brands. And I think it's always a challenge of trying to find new communities to be a part of. Tying back into when you were talking about what sorts of platforms to use, I think that there can be a tendency to just focus on the very major ones, whether that happens to be major media outlets or whether it's the YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. There's a lot of internet out there, and whether it's video or audio or written content, I think it's worth it to try and do the research to find out where your people are. Almost like you're looking for a fan community in a way. So if you're involved in film, where are the film nerds? What message boards are they on? What podcasts are they listening to? Is there some sort of niche social media that they're a part of? Because you could potentially get a lot more response there and build more of a following and more interaction than a bigger social media network or platform where you might get lost in the shuffle. So you have to find that balance, but definitely trying to go a bit outside of the box, I find, has always been helpful. Trying to think if there's anything else I can put out there? And just, yeah, like we were talking about, I think it's keeping a mix of content. So it's important to do video and to show your face behind your company, because people really do want to see that and hear that. So it's important, I think, not to be faceless as a company. And as a person, not just taking pictures of things. Like, the content that does best is often when you're in the photo or video, you're sharing opinions, you're giving a glimpse to something that's a little bit imperfect. I think especially right now when we're all stuck at home, they relate to that imperfection and struggles, and people want to be able to relate to the content they see. I think there's a turning point where it's not going to be as aspirational and picture perfect as it used to be. So I think it's good to keep that in mind.
Yeah. And like, you made a lot of good points. And I think the biggest point that's resonating with me from everything that you're saying, Sabrina, I don't know if anyone else has caught on to this, is just like research. Like, research is so important. And I think people just post instead of really researching what they really need to be, doing for their demographics. So it's a really good point. And then on the storytelling side, Sabrina, and I know Victoria has a question for Natali once I'm done with this, but when there's a lot of people here that are not just, promoting themselves, but they're promoting their brands, or they're promoting their clients' brands. So, how does someone, like, when you get a story, Sabrina, like, how do you choose and say, oh, this is really good, this has engaged me from the beginning? Like, what are those things that people can really do to say this has an amazing buzz right from the get-go and the journalist is really intrigued?
There's a few things. For one, it's a story or an angle that hasn't already been put out there a million times. I think it's really important to not just follow the pack, but try to be a leader and put your own spin on something. Another thing is to stay on top of the current cultural moment, and whether that is what's on the news, or it's what's new on Netflix, or what's trending on reality TV or Twitter. I think just constantly being aware and being open to how that might connect to your brand or your products, and file it away. Like, I'm always making notes. Oh, this is interesting, that's interesting. And sometimes I come back to it 6 months later. But if there's something that you want to learn more about or talk about, or you go, chances are there's something there that if you do a little bit more research, or just when the right moment comes along, that can bloom into a bigger story. And again, just stories that offer a glimpse into something real and authentic, not anything that's overly polished and going to come off as an advertisement, or just like you're seeking publicity. There has to be a real nugget there and a real story for people to be interested, whether that's on social or in a broader media story.
Yeah, it's a great point. Like, we have to really stop thinking about advertising, and more so, what is my story? What am I trying to really tell people about myself and my company? It's a great point. Victoria, you're going to ask Nat something, right?
Yeah, that also reminds me of a great point that Gary Vee says. He always says to jab, 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 hook. So for three moments of storytelling, then you do a hook of like some kind of promotional thing for your business. Just remember that one. Okay, I like to get into the nitty gritty, so I'm going to throw this to Natali and Nesh, because for those of us who are not video editing experts and have all this amazing technology, do you guys have any apps or suggestions for tools that can assist with video editing that's very simple and easy to use and can have that like professional touch?
I guess I'll go first. So I'm a little bit biased because we've been using Adobe Premiere Pro for our entire business for the past 10 years to edit all of our videos. And we just launched a course on how to help other people use Adobe Premiere Pro. So I think that if you're looking for the ultimate versatility and freedom and like being able to really do anything with your videos, then that's the platform that you're going to want to use. Now, there are other softwares out there. You can use things like ScreenFlow or iMovie or Camtasia. These softwares are a little bit like more intuitive and easier to learn, but they don't have the same functionality and freedom like Adobe Premiere Pro does. And I think it really depends where you are in your content creation journey, right? Like, are you just putting together, you know, a video with just a beginning, middle, and end? You're not really adding titles or cutting between cameras. If that's what you're looking to accomplish, you can really do that on your iPhone. There's like a trimming software when you're creating your videos, right? But if you're really looking to take it to the next level and you're looking for something a little bit more professional, and again, just to have that freedom with all the versatility when it comes to video editing, like I said, I'm super biased and recommend Adobe Premiere Pro. And you can get like a membership to Adobe Premiere Pro, which is only, again, $20 a month. I feel like I'm just selling things that are $20 a month, but it's not expensive. So again, I highly recommend that.
Natalie's an investor in Amazon.
Yeah. I should get affiliate.
Yeah, you should get affiliate marketing dollars.
Yeah. Drop the link in the comments.
Can you, Natali, can you put some of those things in the chat for people, just in case they're still wondering? And again, for all of our members, you'll get access to this through your portal after. So if there's something you wanted to check back on, and please feel.
We want to link to your course too.
Yes. I'll drop it in there.
Drop a link to your course in there as well, which I'm hoping to take, because I think I love video editing. I would love to learn how to use Adobe Premiere. So that would be great. And yeah, if anyone has any questions while we're chugging along here, please put it into the chat. Again, we're kind of just getting into it now. So drop any lines you have into the chat. Okay, let's talk about building engaging and branded content. Okay. You know, we're having a conversation about storytelling and putting things out there. And now we know that we have to research what our demographics looking for in terms of what avenues to take and when. You know, I guess I'll start with you, Nesh, but like I mean, you did a great job of explaining the hook, really, the what, the why, and the who you are, especially those few things. So, you know, what are you doing when you're building a strategy for your branded content? Like, what does a strategy look like?
I mean, very much what I described. It just built out further. So those, especially the who, those are and the why. Those are the two questions that you actually would be answering as part of a larger strategy. Those are the questions that you're not going to answer just when you're putting out content. Is you want to mold your business objectives and your financial objectives. You can never forget those, but also your values, objectives, and who you are as a company. I think that a lot of brands right now are struggling with that, because there's more pressure on brands to have sort of values and to be entirely public with those than ever before. And so sometimes there's guilt with remembering your business objectives, but if you're a business, you know, so there's nothing wrong with that. I think that in your like strategy room, whether it's your quarterly or your annual strategic meetings or just sessions, that's when you really want to be thinking about those things on a much larger level that will then trickle down into your content. In terms of your strategic content planning, and this actually isn't part of the planning, but it's something Sabrina has mentioned a couple times that I do want to highlight because it's very important, is the idea of authenticity, which is your audiences right now, regardless of where they are smarter than they've ever been. Like, it's fun to make fun of millennials. First of all, millennials aren't the only audiences anymore, or we never have been, but audiences are really smart and hold brands accountable. So on that note of being, you know, maybe not fully transparent, because how transparent you want to be is up to you. But on that note of having your business objectives and then having your sort of values and your goals and all of those things, let's use the recent Black Lives Matter movement as an example. Audiences held brands accountable. So if someone put something out for the sake of putting something out, they were called out on it. So it's, you know what, as a company, you've actually shown no proof in the past that you frankly, I'm going to swear, oh, you said I can swear, that you give a shit about any of this. So why are you doing it now? A lot of companies tend to jump on things for those purposes. And then on the flip side, though, you know, it's just authenticity is key. If you're very clearly trying to sell something without providing your value or your place in the marketplace or where you're relevant or the trends around what you're trying to talk about, audiences are going to call you out on it. They're not just going to look at the ad and go like, oh, this kind of sucks. They're going to engage with you. They're going to call you out publicly. So you have to be very careful and very thoughtful about these things.
Yeah, those are all really good points. And I mean, we all really feel that too. You know, we comment on other people's brands and people do the same to us. So it's a great point. It's a fine line. It's hard to navigate. And I think that, sure. Yeah. And people always use this word authentic, and it is really, it's hard to be, I think people are just like, just be authentic. Well, it's also hard to be authentic, right? Like, what does that actually mean?
It's hard to do it as a person. But brands are held, right now, brands are being held to the same standards that you would hold someone in your life. So there was a time 20, 50, 60 years ago where brands were like these external entities. You can see it in everything from the way their logos look to whatever it is. They're very sort of prim and proper. Brands don't need to have opinions. It is what it is. That is not the world anymore, especially with social media, with brands being in the same feeds as like my mother and that girl from high school. Brands are expected to take stands in the same way that people are. You know, just like you're like, oh, wow, this person didn't post about this. She must be racist. Joke. I make a lot of racism jokes. Danny's okay with it. I don't know. It's because I'm from South Africa. So it's okay, whatever. See what I've done now.
No, you're good. You're good.
You know, but you're gonna make these judgments on people based on what they post or don't post. The same goes for brands. So as a brand, there is this added pressure. And it was interesting I'm bringing it back to the most relevant thing, which is the most recent movement of Black Lives Matter. It's interesting because I saw brands go under fire. So some brands were quiet for a while because they wanted to be thoughtful. They didn't know if they had a voice in it, and they were called out for that. Some brands did stuff. I saw a lot of tokenism where it was like, I literally had people on my Facebook going, do you know anyone who's Black who knows X, Y, or Z? And it's, you know, the problem is that you have to ask that question. So that's where that comes in. But what I do recognize is how hard it is for entrepreneurs. I know a lot of people struggled through this. I think this is an example of something we're going to see again and again and more often as we're all sitting at home trying to fight this pandemic, and more social issues are going to arise. So what I will say, bringing it back around to strategy, start thinking about these things strategically from the top level. You don't want to just be thinking about these things as they happen. So determine, say like, because me as a person, I can tell you just as a person, the things that really drive me, the social issues that just really irk me and are really important to me. And those are the things in real life I'm going to speak about the most, I'm going to contribute to. So have those discussions with leadership or with your advisors or whatever it is, figure out what those things are, start implementing initiatives around those things so that when things come up, there are certain things that you're going to be able to speak about. And there are certain things that you're just going to shut up and say, you know what? I don't know how to speak about this, but these are the people who do, and we support them, or, you know, whatever that is. But that's kind of how you walk that fine line, is know when to shut up, know when you don't actually have a voice at the table, and know that that's okay.
Yeah, and it's tricky, and it's going to continue to be tricky for brands. And you make a really good point. Like, people are calling out brands that aren't speaking up, and it's such a great point. It did not used to be that way. You could sit back and say, I'm a brand, I'm a company. I'm not a political activist. You know, this is not my world. I'm not even politically charged. And you made such a good point. Like, it's a different world now, and we have to move with the trends, and you have to use your brand voice. So it's a great call. I mean, Natali, from being like a founder, how does that work for you? Are you supposed to do something as yourself, as your brand? Are you supposed to, you know, create a video to kind of just set your message across very clearly? Like, what are your thoughts on that, just in your opinion?
Yeah, I can definitely, say that it's been a bit of a struggle, these past couple of weeks, especially not only from being a founder and, representing the brand in a certain way, but also then, like I said, pivoting into being in front of the camera and putting ourselves out there. There are so many opinions about this, whether or not you need to be out on camera talking about the times or taking a beat back and being silent. And I don't want to, say that one way is wrong and one way is right. I think that people need to get behind what feels right to them in that moment, but still being very supportive to the times and whatever is happening. And most and foremost is just, again, and I feel like this word keeps coming up as we're talking, but staying authentic, right? So it's like, what is authentic? What does that look like? Like, don't say something just because you think you should be saying it, right? Like, don't go on camera and say something that you think other people want to hear, but also like, don't come on camera and be ignorant at the same time, right? So it's just kind of like, you have to find that balance for yourself and what feels right. But people can spot fakeness a mile away. So just stay true to yourself and what you believe in. Also, just don't push your shit on other people either. So again, it can go either way, but I think at the end of the day, if you're staying true to yourself and your message, what you believe, and sensitive to the times, you'll be good. That's a lot.
That was great though. And it's so informative. And I want to go back a little bit more to like the content stuff, because everyone here is pushing out content constantly, right? Like, raise your hand if you've pushed out a piece of content today. Cool. Okay, pop in the chat what you posted or put out today, and in like 3 words, like in 5 words or less if you can. Post it on, and then just tell us what you did, because I want to understand also like what's inspiring people. What are people wanting to post about? What are the things that are is this relevant to your brand? So I'll start with you, Sabrina, and I'll ask the other ladies too, because this is more personal. But where do you look for inspiration when you're creating your content?
It's like I said a little bit before, just always looking for content. Having been to journalism school, I was trained in that very early on, so it just comes naturally to me now. But I think always, whether it's your phone or a little notebook, like get into the habit of writing down little inspirations, or things that make you angry, things that piss you off, things that make you curious, anything that sparks an emotion or reaction, just jot it down and maybe come back to it later. I think it's really important to stay up to date culturally. Like I said before, know what the top podcasts are, know what the top shows are, the music, read a really large variety of news sources from every sort of field, and always challenge yourself to find new ones. Go on message boards, go to niche sites, and try to look for different perspectives, because the one thing about being online, and especially on social media, is it's easy to get caught in your own bubble of groupthink, where social media tends to reflect back on you brands and people who are very similar to you and often share similar opinions and similar sources of news. So I think it has to be an active decision to consciously look beyond those, and also keep tabs on people you don't agree with or brands that you don't agree with, because not doing what they're doing or reacting to what they're doing can also inform your storytelling and how you're going to present to the world. But really, it's keeping an open mind. Also, I know it can be challenging, but there's lots of sites online or apps that can feed you writing prompts or content prompts just by asking a question a day, and those can also be useful if you're stuck. I find
Can you give us some examples, Sabrina, of any of those, like any of the podcasts or those writing prompts?
The writing prompts?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have them off the top of my head, but I could absolutely send out a note afterwards.
That would be great. Yeah, we're going to send a post webinar email. So we would love to include some of those. But sorry, continue on.
Absolutely will. Now I'm like,
sorry, I cut you off. That's so bad of me.
No, it's okay. I think I was just saying, like, keep an open mind, be curious, and scheduling. I definitely know what writer's block and creative block feels like. just getting something down on that blank page, or starting to shoot a video, or starting to take photographs, starting's the hardest part. I find if you say, I'm going to do 2 hours of this a day, or this time every day I'm going to do this, or, you know, spend time in a certain inspirational place, really force yourself to get started. I find that helps a lot for sure.
Yeah. And just, it's such a good point. Like almost just like leaving your workspace and just going out to find that inspiration, right? Because
yeah,
it's not
and
all
mind your friends and contacts for ideas as well. So many of my best story ideas have come from conversations with friends or colleagues or family members. Talk to them about what's going on in the world, the issues. Ask them what they would like to hear or heard explored more, or what they would like to see. Ask your followers and your customers in your community for ideas. Like, people love giving that sorts of feedback, and really the more perspectives and life experiences you can draw from, the better you're going to be positioned to tell good stories and interesting stories.
Such a great point. I honestly, Sabrina, I just did something recently where I just asked, just even on Instagram or something, I just asked something really simple, like, what's your favorite something? Or I posted on Facebook a couple months ago because I love self-help books. So it's like, what's, you know, I need a new self-help book. And so many people commented, and I got such good engagement from that post. And I actually got some really good books out of it too. So it's just something simple like that, right? Like asking people for help and community, you know, for ideas and suggestions. So it's a great idea.
It almost serves, oh, sorry. I was just going to say,
yeah.
it serves a dual purpose, because it gives you that interaction with your followers or your community, and makes them feel listened to and like they're part of the conversation. And you're also getting ideas from it. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And I mean, the only other thing that I wanted to touch on before we go into Q&A, and again, please pop any questions you have in the chat. You'll get to ask the girls directly on video if you'd like, or Victoria can ask for you. So pop any questions you have or comments, anything like that. But, you know, we're talking about content, and I really kind of, you know, there's a fine line between also creating all of this content and also kind of stepping back from it, and looking at things from a different lens. I went on a tangent and now I forgot my actual question, and I didn't write it down because we were talking about something, Sabrina, and it triggered me.
I feel like I'm reading your mind, Danny. I think you just transferred it to my head.
Okay, wait, what are you gonna ask?
I was gonna ask, just from your perspective, like collectively, I mean, creating content is one thing, but ensuring that that leads to revenue being driven is a whole other, was I reading your mind?
Absolutely.
Okay, is a whole other ball game. So I would like to know what you guys have found in your content creation journey. Maybe Nesh, this is something you can really speak to, and how you really ensure that there's a conversion there to support your business or your product or your services.
So content creation is a piece of the customer journey. And I think that in your planning stages, I go back to all the planning, you can tell I keep a lot of Google Docs, even for my personal life. In content, in your planning stages at the top level, you really want to define your customer journey, and content is a really good step in that journey. Whether you are selling your customer on your product directly, so whether you do have you know, backlinks, sending them back to your website, whether it's a direct ask in the page, which you don't want to do all the time, or whether it's just kind of selling them or convincing them or discussing a certain concept around what it is that you're selling. So for example, say I'm an acupuncturist, and some of my pieces may directly be saying, you know, if we're talking content, it could be social content, you know, 50% off, whatever, act now. It could be a very, very specific direct call to action. However, some of my content is going to be for the audience that's not actually sold on the idea of sticking needles in your face. So that's where those purposes come in. And you just need to figure out where in that audience journey, from them first knowing about your brand or the concept of your brand, where in that audience journey does your content sit? If the audience journey is starting at knowing the concept of your brand, that's going to be a little longer. If your audience journey is starting with you convincing them of the content, of the value of the concept of your brand before even getting to your brand, that's going to be a much longer journey. But it depends on where that audience is in their mindset when it comes to figuring out how you make that leap. If you make that leap too quickly, if someone doesn't, again, believe in sticking needles in their face, but you're saying 50% off right now, blah, 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 you're going to lose that person so fast and you're going to leave a bad taste in their mouth. So you do want to, and my dog. So that's why you do want to be cautious of where you are in that journey. And again, the planning, the asking yourself those questions ahead of time, and recognizing that no piece of content you put out is going to be for everyone. And that's okay. That's totally fine.
Yeah. And I think it all comes back to building the trust with your audience, that they can like come to you as a reliable source for whatever you're talking about. And I know for Danny and I, even with building City Moguls, one of the biggest things has always been that the value is there, that people feel like no matter what they're coming to, they're going to get value from us at City Moguls. So I think offering things for free, giving as much as you can, will always come back for you in terms of those conversions.
Yeah, and it's so interesting too to just kind of remind yourself as a brand and as a person not to compare yourself. It's such an easy thing. We all know this. Don't compare yourself to other people, but you really can't. Like if you are, I'll just use yours, Nesh. If you're an acupuncturist, like why would you go to the next acupuncturist and try and copy their content? Because you have such a different lens, you have such a different story, you have such a different background, you have probably a different clientele. So there's no two acupuncturists that are alike, right? So why would you go to them to, you can go to them for inspiration, but something that we also try to do as a community is there's lots of different communities like this, but we know that we have a unique value, right? So, sorry, Nesh, were you gonna say something?
Well, the one thing that gets, and it depends on the type of company and the type of founder, often founders focus just on that conversion piece or just on that metric. And then there are some founders or some companies that are focusing a lot on just building that brand. You want to find the sweet spot that works for your brand, because if you haven't built a brand enough and you're just focusing on the product itself or that final conversion piece, you're going to miss out a lot, because honestly, your consumer's not going to trust you and believe in you. Not trying to plug City Moguls right now, but I guess I'm about to. Congratulations. I think you guys have done a fantastic job. Like, I think I've been slowly following you on the back end for a few years, and I think it's really cool. Initially, I was like, who are these guys? Like, this event looks kind of cool, but whatever. And now look at me, I'm plugging you at your event. I'm about to get a tattoo. And it is a slow build, right? And that's a huge thing, and you need to be okay with that. The problem with it is it's much harder to measure. It's much harder to measure your brand sentiment or how people feel about your brand or your company. And that's not something that you're going to do based on one piece of content, by the way. You can do things like, just social listening and measuring that kind of stuff, but that's an immeasurable thing that's incredibly important.
That's
I
such a
just
great
want
point.
to add to that really quickly. Something that Nesh said is that, we've been approached, in NYB Media by many brands being like, we need to create this promotional video. What's the conversion rate for this? How much are we going to sell from this video? And the answer is always, there is no conversion rate. There's actually no way to measure one piece of content and the conversion rate that it will give you. The best way to look at content is it's a nurturing process. And like Nesh said, you've been following City Moguls for a while. They've been nurturing you with their content for a while, and conversions don't happen overnight. So it took X amount of time, maybe it'd be 2-3 weeks, a month, whatever it was, of City Moguls nurturing Nesh over time to get you to, how many?
2 years.
2 years. There you go. So I think that's a part of it. Like when you're looking at conversions in general, whether it be the people in your community or people buying products from you, it can take anywhere from instant to 2 years to 5 years, however long it takes. So when you're creating content, you know, think of it as nurturing your audience, and also like, what are their pain points? Like, what are you addressing them? How are you going to get them to a place of conversion faster, you know, while also being authentic and not being pushy, advertising. So yeah, I would say think of it as nurturing way more than just creating content.
Thanks, Nat. Yeah. Florence, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much for the talk. So my question is it really a sin to put out the same content on, say, 3 different platforms? Because for myself, I'm just building my business, and so I'm trying out different outlets. However, I'm finding that I'm putting the same thing out because I don't know how to tweak it. So I thought, you know what, the best way is just to put it out and get it out there. So I'd love to hear your insight on that.
Who wants to take a stab at it? Sure. Go ahead, Nesh.
Yeah, I don't want to be that person. Okay. So Florence, let's do a quick working session. Do you want to give me an example of the type of content you were trying to put out earlier?
Oh, so my thing is I'm a mental wellness in the workplace coach. And so I'm trying to do different areas such as networking, mental health, etc. And so the 3 that I've decided to focus on were Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. But I get it in the sense of there are different audiences that gravitate towards that. It's just for me, right now for me, social media is kind of overwhelming. And so for the take that I have is like, put out something and let's see what happens.
You know, there's nothing, so don't be cruel to yourself, first of all, about this, let's put it out there and see what happens. That's actually a very important step in marketing, and that's just testing your market. Throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what sticks, because based on what sticks, you can then change your strategy. So that's not a bad thing that you're doing. And don't discredit yourself in that way. The second thing is, I personally don't think it's a bad thing, because in your content, you're putting out a general idea, a general feel, but it's the difference of, say, sorry, I use a lot of analogy, and I'm apologizing too much, I'm catching it. If I'm hosting a dinner party and I make a plate of food for my best pal who's next to me, and it's the same meal, but I'm going to plate it differently for my best pal, maybe add, you know, some more wine or whatever it is, versus my toddler. It's the same meal, you're just changing it up a little bit. So you can write an entire piece, but it may just be one line that you use in Instagram. Another thing, when talking customer journey, it's kind of great to get your customer to flip between your different platforms. So if you can, a little trick that I've used quite a bit is, say I'm putting an article out on LinkedIn that also exists on my physical blog. What I'll do is, in the LinkedIn blog option, start the piece of content, and then kind of have a little continue reading, and then hyperlink, because what, again, you're trying to move them closer and closer to your website, even from your social. You're just trying to get them back to your home. So using that content in that way and moving them through that is totally okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just making sure that that meal and that plate is appropriately plated for whoever's going to have it.
Thanks, Nesh. That's super helpful. And thanks, Lawrence, for your question. We have another question from Meghna, if you want to take yourself off mute.
Hello. I have a question for Sabrina, and it was about content and producing authentic content. You were talking earlier about how you were a private person before when social media started, and I'm wondering how you kind of got over that fear of putting yourself out there, and like some prompts maybe that you used, or maybe a different mindset of, you know, feeling comfortable enough to put yourself out there and connect with your audience in a more authentic way.
Great question. I think honestly it's a cliche, but practice makes perfect. Forcing yourself to get outside of that comfort zone, and whether it's tweet, or especially when it comes to filming video, definitely I had a steep learning curve when it came to going on television or doing digital video. And a lot of that just came from doing it over and over again and then watching it back. And you can do this at home even, where you can tape yourself and then have a friend or a colleague or a trusted mentor give you feedback. And whether it's things about how you're using your hands or your posture, or maybe your tone of voice, or words that you say too often that you wouldn't usually notice, you will notice that as you watch it back and as you get feedback from other people. That was incredibly helpful for me. Also, just, I think overcoming the pressure to get big numbers. You know, everyone wants something to go viral these days, or they think, oh, I have to have, whether it's 100 or 500 or 10,000 or 100,000 followers or likes. I think when you treat it more like you're talking to real people and you're actually having interactions, whether it's in the comments or tweets, it seems like more of an actual social interaction, which is what social media should be. Instead of thinking about talking at people, think about talking with people. And that, I think, adds a different comfort level. And through that, you'll also get to know other people on those platforms and your audience better, and you'll understand what they react well to and what they want to talk about. And as that happens, it's like any relationship. You go from the first date phase to the you're going to lounge in your sweatpants and like fart in front of them phase, right? So you're going to have that progression where you get more and more comfortable. But really at the beginning, you just have to start doing it for sure, and force yourself to get through that discomfort level and that anxiety.
Thanks for your question, Magna. And, you know, just to add to that, Sabrina, you make such a good point. You know, I used to do videos and I was like, oh, it's not good enough. I'm going to do another one. And I would do it over and over and over again because I was striving for a perfect video, and nothing's perfect. And nothing you put out is going to be 100% what you want it to be. And I think that's exactly what you were saying. Like, you just have to put it out there and you'll tweak and refine and iterate as you go and as you learn. So
yeah, like you said, of course you're going to grow. I think the other thing is people don't want that perfect video or that perfect message. People want that imperfection. And if you can admit it and make fun of yourself and acknowledge it and talk about how you're growing and talk about your anxiety and how you're uncomfortable perhaps, because a lot of other people are feeling that way too. That comes back again to the authenticity we keep talking about. As long as you're honest with your followers and your audience, they tend to react really, really well to that. And you'll find you have more in common than you might have expected.
Such a great point. Okay, we're going to finish off with a quick lightning round, ladies, if this is okay. So first question, whoever wants to jump in first.
Question. Linda had a question.
Oh, sorry. One more question from Linda, and then we're going to do a quick lightning round.
Hi, it's I have a question for Sabrina. It was a late question because I'm sitting here wondering if I should ask it, but when emailing journalists, I've done so to write about my app. I'm wondering in the email, how much should be about just what my app does, and maybe how much of that and the email should be about my story of how I created it, because I think it's kind of a neat story. Like a journalist like yourself, do you just kind of care about, you know, what the product is, or more about, you know, the person behind it and how it was created?
I think that's where it comes down to, what story do you want to tell with that journalist and that platform. So if you're looking for a profile or your origin story to be put out there, then definitely focus on that, and then just have a little bit about what the product actually is. But on the flip side, if you want it to be perhaps a trend story about what your product or your app is, then you don't really need the creation story in there as much, because it's just not as relevant. I think you always want to be as clear and concise and to the point as possible. Journalists get a lot of emails, so make sure you have a catchy subject line and you get right to it. And if you do want to provide information, that's often what attachments are for. See attached, or say, I have these materials available and I'm happy to send them to you anytime. But rather than trying to tell them everything at once, I would say try and narrow it to specifically what you want them to focus on, and know why that is and explain to them why that is.
Okay, perfect.
Is that helpful at all?
It is, yeah. I read so many articles, on how to write this email, and you know, sometimes I have like a long email and I think no one's going to read that, then I got down to a couple sentences and I feel like, well, that just doesn't explain it. So anything that, yeah, I just wanted to ask that question, but that helps. So,
yeah, and I'd say I know there's obviously tons of advice out there about how to pitch or how to email, but don't get too wrapped up in specific formats or like journalists are people. Like, just talk to me like you're trying to get me interested in the story, like you've met me on the street and hey, this is why this is interesting, and reel me in that way. And we respond well to that. Again, it doesn't have to be a specific format or a specific language. Just, yeah, do what feels right for you.
okay, perfect. That's great. Thank you.
Of course.
So we're just going to stop overthinking everything. That's my biggest takeaway. Just stop overthinking, really. Okay, quick lightning round before we wrap this awesome session up. Okay, let's go in. I'll let you guys are all fiery, so I'll just let you chime in whenever. Okay, quick things. Favorite, and this is obviously with the content creation lens, okay? So favorite podcast or book recently, go. No pressure.
How I Built This with Guy Raz. That's my favorite podcast of all time.
What's it called? Say it again, Natali.
How I Built This with Guy Raz.
Nice.
So not content creation as much, but I'm really into The Moth. I think that's probably my favorite of all time, and that's storytelling. If you haven't listened to it, it's fantastic.
Cool. Never heard of it.
Please do listen.
Sabrina.
I'm in the middle of reading a book right now. It's called Panic in Level 4. And of course, this is what I'm reading right now. Sorry, my screen just blacked out there for a second.
Okay, you're good.
It's a very science-based book, and it's about level 4 biohazards and like smallpox, and it goes into the CDC, and of course inspired by this current period. But it's written by science and mathematics journalists, which is really out of my scope. I was terrible at math and science in school, but this writer finds such a way to make it digestible and interesting to someone who really knows nothing about this and usually actually wouldn't necessarily be that interested. So it's a good reminder to, I think, always get outside of your comfort zone and your box and think about talking to different audiences that maybe you wouldn't necessarily target, or listening to different sources that you wouldn't think of. So it inspired me to get a bit out of my own comfort zone.
Very cool. I know I was terrible at math too, but that sounds very interesting. Okay, 2 more rounds. Favorite thing to do to unwind? Because I know everyone's working a lot. What do you guys do to unwind during COVID?
I'm a Netflix addict.
What are you watching?
Definitely.
Anything good?
What am I not watching? Well, actually what I'm watching right now is on Amazon. It's called The Magicians. It's like a fantasy, like adult Hogwarts is the best way that I can describe it. It's a little bit dark and a little bit out there, but it's a good one.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say Netflix and wine. Those are my things.
Okay, so better question is, what is everyone watching right now, really quickly?
I was going to say hiking though, because I'm just really active and but I really walk and listen to music or podcasts, because otherwise I don't do anything active at all.
Fair enough. And Natali, what are you watching right now?
So I'm watching a documentary called The Business of Drugs. Yes.
Saw that.
Very eye-opening.
Very cool. Okay, last one. Best piece of advice that you can dish out right now. It can be anything really for any entrepreneur here, but you know, you guys are so inspirational and lots of really great learnings here today. But you know, what's the one kind of piece of advice or one takeaway you can leave us with today?
I'd say to
everyone at the same time now. Okay, go for it, Sabrina.
To get outside of your comfort zone, definitely. And one thing I've always lived by is be everywhere and meet everyone. Obviously, that's a little bit different during a pandemic, but always try to be looking for new connections, new sources, and you also never know when an opportunity could spring up. So definitely always have networking and finding new perspectives in mind.
Natali?
I love that. Mine isn't as profound as that, but it's with the content creation lens on. I would say for anyone who's trying to get more comfortable getting on camera and using video as part of your content tool, there's one little tip that I recommend everybody do, and it is get in the shower and pretend to accept a Grammy. I don't know if anybody did that growing up, but it helps tremendously. And whatever that award is, what's the Grammy, maybe it's Olympic medal, whatever it is, just pretend out loud to accept that award.
I just want to thank all of you for being here. Okay. Nesh, yours? Oh, she's on mute.
Yeah, no,
There
I've
you go.
done that all the time. Like after watching beauty pageants when I was little, I would like prance around my house. Okay. I would say, so from a general entrepreneur lens, 99% of the time, the limits that you have on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve are self-imposed. So the biggest thing that I've actually invested in throughout my journey has been like being able to tap into that stuff and clear it. I always have, when I was younger, especially, dismissed a lot of that stuff as just like in your brain mumbo jumbo, and I'm very much, this needs to get done and blah, 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 blah. And it took me a long time to actually take a step back from everything going around me, the strategy that I'm trying to build and this and that. And I know I spent most of today talking about strategy, but it actually wasn't till I looked inside myself that I was able to implement a lot of that. So stop putting those limits on yourself.
No limits, hashtag no limits. We don't talk about hashtags, but we'll do a whole other series. Don't you guys worry. Thank you guys so much for being here. Yes, we can give a little silent clap. Thank you guys so much. And we're so grateful to have had all of you here. I feel like we could go on and on and on because there's such good stuff here and such good juicy nuggets, which Victoria and I love. If anyone is interested in finding you guys online, where can they find you and can they connect with you?
My site is sabrinamadeaux.com, and all my social media handles are at Sabrina Madeaux. So just my full name, that covers it. Perfect.
Nesh?
Yeah, I'm just going to put mine in the chat box, but my social handles are always at pillay.nesh. And I don't even need to give you my website. Just reach out to me on social. I'm happy to talk about anything, always.
Awesome. Natali?
These days, the best place to find me is coursecreation.com, or on Instagram, same thing, coursecreation.com, but spell out dot, not the actual dot.
Yeah, pop it in the chat there so everyone has everyone's handles. And yeah, thank you guys so much. And again, if you are not a City Moguls member, you can join now for the year and get access to all of these Powerhouse webinars, workshops, new things coming up in the fall. So stay tuned and join us as a member, because I love seeing all of our members here. It's so nice. And Vic, is there anything else you want to finish off with?
Well, we'll see you guys, members, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks at our networking happy hour after the long weekend. So we'll get some time to reset, which is great. And if any of you guys want to join us at our networking happy hour, it's Thursday, August 6th. Tickets are only $7. So we hope you can join us.
Yeah, it's a great hour of like speed networking. And like Sabrina said, you get to just meet tons of people, put yourself out there. Great way to practice with yourself on video. And yeah, we'd love to see you guys there. Thank you guys so much. Thanks, Natali, Sabrina, Nesh. Nice to see you all. Have a lovely, now it's sunny out for me. Just, you guys brought the sun. So thank you. Nice to see you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
You too.
Nice.
Why'd you have to leave?